It happened without warning. No flash, no signal, no sound. People simply felt something new inside. Some realized they could lift objects with their minds. Some felt their skin become harder than stone. Some discovered they no longer felt pain. Every person on the planet was given one random ability. The world didn't explode immediately, it froze, as if taking a deep breath before collapsing. At first, people experimented. They jumped higher than usual, set their palms on fire, stopped time for a split second. But very quickly, joy gave way to fear. The abilities manifested uncontrollably. Some accidentally destroyed walls. Some injured loved ones. The city filled with screams, explosions, and sudden silence. The laws of physics were no longer universal, now everyone had their own. It quickly became clear, abilities were not created equal. One could read minds, another could glow in the dark. One could control gravity, another could change hair color. Society instantly fragmented. A person's worth was no longer determined by character and hard work, but by luck. Those lucky became dangerous. Those unlucky were vulnerable. Justice died first. Armies proved useless. A general with a pistol couldn't stop a man bending tanks with his hands. Police disappeared within 24 hours. Laws written for ordinary people no longer applied. Governments tried to negotiate with the strongest, but negotiations quickly turned into ultimatums. The world ceased to be governed, it began to obey. Names appeared. Alphas, nulls, anomalous. People began to be sorted. The strong were guarded, the weak were exploited. Some abilities became currency. Teleportation was for the elite. Healers were controlled. The world became caste-based again, but this time forever. To be born without power meant to live life at the bottom of a new food chain. Abilities destroyed families. A child could be stronger than his parents. A husband feared his wife. A brother feared his brother. Love no longer guaranteed safety. Arguments became deadly. People began hiding their powers even from their loved ones. The home ceased to be a refuge, it became a potential battlefield. People sought ways to steal, enhance, or suppress the powers of others. Drugs, devices, and experiments emerged. Some people were kept in cages for their abilities. Others were broken in attempts to rewrite their powers. Science ceased to be ethical, survival became more important than morality. Some abilities were so powerful that their bearers were no longer considered human. They were feared, worshipped. They established their own rules, their own territories, their own laws. The world returned to the gods, but now they walked the streets, got angry, made mistakes, and took revenge. Wars were no longer declared, they broke out instantly. A single person could destroy a city faster than an entire army could before. Countries tried to create squads of the strongest, but such groups quickly spiraled out of control. Front lines disappeared. The enemy could be a neighbor, a passerby, or one's own soldier. The world entered an era of conflict without rules and without winners. To survive, the authorities began to register abilities. People were forced to undergo checks, tests, and interrogations. Those whose powers were considered dangerous were isolated. But fear didn't work. The stronger the control, the fiercer the resistance. People with powerful abilities went underground, creating shadow communities beyond anyone's control. Architecture changed. Neighborhoods emerged where only certain types of people could live. Those who fired energy were kept separate. Those who shifted space were kept separate. Ordinary people huddled in protected areas, like reservations. The city ceased to be a shared space, it became a map of opportunities and threats. Abilities became a commodity. Not directly, but through influence. People with the right powers were hired, bought, blackmailed. Contracts were signed in blood. Business no longer depended on money, it depended on someone who could stop time, erase memories, or protect from everyone else. Ordinary people began to be called empty. They were denied access to professions, neighborhoods, and decisions. They were considered dead weight. A resistance movement arose, not against the strong, but for the right to be weak and still human. But in a world of power, morality became increasingly silent. Ability began to define a person entirely. People were no longer asked who they were asked what they could do. Name was replaced by function. Those whose powers were destructive gradually lost empathy. Those whose powers were useful became tools. The human self dissolved into usefulness. Scientists tried to create a way to equalize people. Suppressors, neutralizers, temporary blocks. But each experiment caused new mutations. The world resisted balance. It seemed reality itself had decided that equality was a mistake and chaos the new norm. People began to fear children. No one knew what abilities a newborn would manifest. Maternity hospitals became guarded facilities. Love for a child now went hand in hand with anxiety. The future ceased to be a hope, it became a threat. Over time, people emerge whose abilities surpass all others. They are unstoppable, unconstrained, and impossible to negotiate with. Cults form around them. They are called saviors, gods, anchors of order. They don't ask for power, they give it voluntarily. And for the first time, humanity realizes, democracy cannot survive alongside absolute power. Cities under the protection of the strongest live in peace. There is no crime, no war, no chaos. But the price for peace is freedom. Any dissent is perceived as a threat. People begin to ask, if the world is perfect, but you can't choose, is it safety or a prison? Groups emerge that advocate not for equality, but for the rejection of abilities altogether. They dream of a world where no one flies, no one erases memories, no one breaks reality. They are called madmen. But it is they who remind the world that humanity once lived without powers, and yet it did. Conflict between the strongest is inevitable. When powers clash, the planet suffers. Mountains disappear, cities are erased, the climate collapses. This is not a war for resources or an idea, it is a clash of egos, amplified to the point of catastrophe. There are no winners, only survivors. After the destruction, it becomes clear, abilities have not made humanity better. They have only accelerated everything that was already within. Greed has become greedier, fear deeper, love more dangerous. Power has not changed people, it has removed their limitations. The world is being rebuilt. Fewer states, fewer people, fewer illusions. Abilities no longer grant freedom, they are rigidly limited by agreements between the strongest. This is neither utopia nor hell. It is a compromise on the brink of survival. Everyone still possesses power. But the main question is no longer which ability you've been given. The question is different, is a person capable of not using it? Self-control is becoming the rarest gift in a world where everything is possible. If everyone were given a superpower, humanity would not become gods. It would become a mirror reflecting both the worst and the best simultaneously. And perhaps the most dangerous force is not destruction, but the lack of boundaries within ourselves. Children born after the emergence of abilities are granted them from the first moments of life. They don't learn control; for them, destruction is as natural as breathing. Childhood squabbles turn into disasters, schools into risk zones. Society is forced to isolate children not for punishment, but for survival. Childhood is no longer considered a safe stage of life. Money loses its meaning. Value is determined by the usefulness of power. Those who can create energy become richer than any billionaire. Teleportation is more important than gold. Healing is more valuable than oil. A market for abilities is formed, where a person is valued not as an individual, but as a tool. The economy ceases to be human. Time passes, and the world begins to tire. Tired of constant danger, of stress, of the need to be strong. People with simple, useless abilities suddenly turn out to be the calmest. They are not feared. They are not exploited. And it is they who begin to be valued for a rare quality, normality. The world with superpowers survived, but became harsher, colder, and more honest. He proved one simple truth: the problem was never human weakness. The problem was that humans weren't ready for absolute freedom. And perhaps true strength lies in the limits we choose for ourselves.